That's one of the wonderful, magnificent parts of Ananda is you can always, if you search, and now you can search globally through the internet, you can always find somebody who understands it the same way you do. And so you never have to feel like, oh, I can't be like them, because of course you can't be like this one or that one. But there's always someone who matches you in this family, in the sense that we're all, it's a very complex weave, and every thread touches another thread, touches another, and we can each find our way. After so many years, which Ananda gracefully pointed out, of being the A-team, as we have often been, things get simpler. They don't necessarily, well, they get easier too, but they also get very simple. And one of the most profound and simple things that we all gradually learn is that God made us a certain way, and whether He was having a good or a bad day, this is the result. And wherever we're standing is the only place we can start from. And no matter how hard we try to work out someone else's karma, it never works. It always has to be the one that was given to me, which may appear to be the easiest or the hardest or the luckiest or the most cursed. Doesn't make any difference. It's just the one we're standing in. And in many years of trying to share with people what Swamiji shared with us, I often have people will be talking to me personally, in a private conversation, I mean, and they'll say something like, I know this is stupid to feel this way. I know it's really dumb. I know I really shouldn't. And I always try to stop them. Just don't go any farther with that thought. And we work very, very hard to get this confused. We really do. We put out a great deal of energy over many lifetimes. We make countless decisions, and every one of them was the best decision we could make at the time. Because if we could have made a better one, we would have made that one. And we made that one because it's exactly the right decision to move us to the next square of what we ourselves have to learn to untie the unique and ultimately resolvable karmic knots that we have tied ourselves into. And so much energy is lost just rebelling against what is, you know? And it's very simple, and it's kind of a cliche at this point, that reality always wins. You can try as hard as you can to want it to be different. We can shout, we can scream, we can knock our heads against the wall, but it just is what it is. And even more compelling and powerful in that thought is that every river flows to the sea, and no matter what kind of obstacles you put in front of that river, it will persist until it makes it to the sea. And our own nature, given to us by God, is that we are going to persist until we make it to the sea. My name, Asha, means hope. I was very pleased when Swamiji gave me this name quite a long time ago, before Aditya was born. You know, Master said not to tell your age because you identify with it, but sometimes you sort of want to know. I learned from Kirtani, instead of talking about age or even asking anybody, I ask, what year were you born? Because it's very interesting. When someone tells you what year they were born, then you can put them in the context of your own experience, in the context of their experience, but you've never given that number. So it's a nice little workaround that I figured out in all of that. You know, people were born when we were in the courtroom dealing with all of that. I mean, you were in the womb and we were in the courtroom. You know, that's just like, it puts things in a very different perspective. But in any case, when Swamiji gave me my name, I was really pleased because it was so simple. Simple name, simple meaning, just work with that. And of course, it's a very wonderful, positive name. Somebody said to me very recently, after all these years of carrying it, he said, well, hope is a definition of God. Because if you ask yourself the question, why don't we just give up? Why don't we just commit suicide? And we do. We commit suicide. We try everything. We try drugs. We try alcohol. Sometimes we go back to some of those things. We sleep too much. Whatever it is, we do. Because we're always trying to see if there's an alternative. That's the way it works. When Master told Swamiji that before you can be liberated, any remaining desire you have to fulfill. And Swamiji said to Master when he said that, he said, sir, what about like when I was a child and I wanted an ice cream cone and I didn't get it? Do I have to fulfill even that? And Master said, yes. And I mean, you just don't even know where to go with that. And a lot of times the things that Swamiji said over the years, Master writes, they stick in your mind. And it's not sometimes, they don't always stick in your mind because you understand them. They hang out there because you're not quite sure. And I've worried about that ice cream cone for a really long time. But what I finally began to feel was simply this. Because the Maya is so persuasive, and because from a very, very, very young age, I was with Patrick Mahoney when his daughter Leah was born, and Leah had a little bit of distress just for a few minutes, so they picked the baby up. It was a hospital. It was a natural birth in the hospital. They picked the baby up and walked away with it, and the father, Chaitanya, followed the baby, and I followed him. And so the little baby's here, and she was fine almost immediately. And she saw her father, who was completely smitten, of course, and she just took her little hand and reached up for his hand, which, yeah, and it's, he's a big man. Her tiny little fingers, barely went around his thumb like this. It just, your heart just goes in 1,000 beautiful pieces. But another part of me thought, oh my God, she's a minute old, and she's reaching out to this world to see what she can take hold of. So this is what we do. And it's a weird thing, and this is the way they set it up. And someday we'll get to ask them why. But we have to learn from experience. And this is where the uniqueness of our individuality comes in. We have to learn from experience. People can tell you over and over and over again, and we do tell each other over and over again, because when words are spoken with conviction, they have power. When somebody else's conviction can what does it give us? Well, you know what it gives us? It gives us hope. It gives us the possibility that what they're saying is true. And once we have the idea that this might be true, that's what gives us the hope to continue, isn't it? When I saw Swami Kriyananda in November of 1969, when he walked into a room, he didn't say anything. He hadn't yet spoken. I recognized him. I recognized him from a karmic perspective, you can say. I knew him from before, and I was simply meeting him again in this life, because it was so complete in seconds. But the other thing was, I recognized that he had the consciousness that I wanted. And if somebody could have it, and that somebody was willing to try to teach me, then I had hope. And what characterized me before I met him was that I was hoping to have hope. But there was nothing that had proved to me that it could be done. But it has to be done because we have been conducting a very long experiment, which is the neti experiment that they were referring to on Monday. Is this it? Is this it? Is this it? Is this it? And the only way we finally become convinced is when we have tested it. And it's not, one of Swami's most magnificent phrases, of billions of them, was that we learn from being disappointed. We do learn from being disappointed, but we learn much more from being fulfilled. Because when we're disappointed, when we want that ice cream cone and persuade ourselves not to get it, there's always a little piece of us that thinks, I might have been happier if I'd had it. So when we finally do fulfill every one of those desires, when we finally have the experience, and I don't know if it's literally the ice cream cone or the vibration of consciousness that an ice cream cone represents. These are details that my brain just doesn't need to know. It's that somehow we transcend whatever that empty spot was. And we transcend it, and often it's a beautiful experience. I mean, it's just a beautiful experience. There is a great deal of suffering in Maya, and there's just a great deal that's beautiful, isn't there? So, but still, even at the end of all of that, if we don't also have God, then it's neti. It's not this. Well, that was wonderful, but it's not enough. And so this world is set up in such a way that we don't get to hold anything. Even the worst eventually passes. I remember when a friend was in just a horrible karmic period, just like if it could go wrong, it did. And it was huge. And finally he's just almost in despair. Swamiji, what am I supposed to do? And Swami himself, this is all he could say. All karma eventually ends. You know, no matter what it is, we hold on to that hope. And we hold on to that hope because it's God within us. That the temporary is simply temporary. And whatever it is, even if it's many incarnations, you know, it's always now, and when it's over, it's over. And that now is then just past. So the whole art of the spiritual path is how not to quit. How to just hold on to that hope enough that we can keep going, that we have enough tools in our toolbox. And I was very happy when this week started with the 8 manifestations of God, because that to me has always been one of the most important tools in my toolbox. You know, I'm not necessarily capable of sitting down and concentrating deep enough to perceive the Maya and enter the changeless. God bless you if you can, but I'm not one of them. So there are these 8 manifestations of God, and this is how they've always worked for me. There's always one of them that's accessible. And so for my life, it's not been at all a philosophical abstraction. We talk about remember God, be a channel for God, you know, be in tune with God. And the word God comes to have profound and powerful meaning because of our experiences, but it's still an abstraction. And what we need is an experience. So the 8 manifestations are the ways in which the God beyond creation enters creation. Love, peace, joy, calmness, energy, power, light, sound, wisdom. That's how it comes. And we, in order to get through this changeable world and remember the unchanging, need to have a way to cling to that. And you can think about it. There are times when joy, for example, is just utterly unacceptable, inaccessible. The heart breaks. Karma comes like an 18-wheeler crossing into your lane and just running over you and then stopping and backing up and going forward and backward, you know, just to make sure. And and maybe it shows, you know, maybe you're all broken on the outside, so everybody knows it and gets to pray for you. I highly recommend having dramatic public catastrophes, because then everybody prays for me. Yeah, No, it's exactly. And then you're in a very weird mixed place where you're just inundated with blessings, even though you're such a mess. But sometimes it's just inside. And everybody's different. And you can't say that whether it shows or doesn't show. Some of the hardest battles we fight, nobody ever knows. You can't even put them in words. You don't even know you're fighting a battle. You're just living. But sometimes joy is very hard to come by, as an example. So you can think, well, what else can I be? If all else fails, I can try to be calm. And if calm is out of the question, then I can put out energy. And I can always find something. And wisdom, which has been discussed a great deal, which is, someone asked me once, a question I'd never thought of. What are your favorite manifestations of God? I'd never thought about having favorites. But I was actually a good question. I quite enjoyed it. I said joy and wisdom. And I'm not talking about intellectuality. Some people get confused because I'm a wordsmith and a writer and a speaker, and because I do love to spin ideas, self-evidently. But that's not wisdom. That's just words and ideas and intellectuality. Wisdom is the inescapability of divine law. And wisdom is understanding that divine law is inescapable. And so I can have all the opinions I want. I can have all the emotions I want. And God and Guru don't care. They don't care at all. It looms so large in our little tiny mental sphere, this moment of wrong attitude, this moment of collapse, and they don't even see it. Swamiji had this wonderful way of dealing with the suffering that is almost overwhelming in this world. Just everywhere you look. You know, there's great beauty, but so much struggle. What to speak of all those things that are so far out of our control. And Swamiji said whenever he would see people suffering, he would always think, oh, then how much more beautiful it will be when all that suffering finally ends in bliss. And that bliss will be so much sweeter because of all that they had to do to get to this point. And so when he would look at us, he would see that we were suffering, but he would see the end of it too. And that's true every time we look at anyone. Whatever we have to go through, if it's not the happy ending, it's not the ending. That's the presence of God. That's the hope within us. And that's not a false hope. That's an absolutely true one. I've taken what Swami said and begun to think of it in a slightly different way, using it both in myself and also when I look at others. Think of it this way. I met a woman in another country. You all know I've been traveling a lot. And because I'm not holding her permission, I'll just give the outlines of it. She has a child who began life seemingly healthy and well, but after about 10 years, discovered that the child had very serious genetic anomalies and would never grow up normal and would not live very long. I've never given birth to children in this life, but we all understand what that means. At the same time, this child has very, very, very good spiritual karma. And in the process of having to deal with what they're dealing with, has had very deep experiences of God. So I look at the grieving mother and I think, now just stand back an inch. And she's, if you weren't suffering, and if, and you had birthed a child who had very deep experiences of God, would you feel that that was a blessing? Would you feel that your life as a mother had been fulfilled? That that child's life had been fulfilled? Why are we here? And so at the same time, when very difficult things happen to us, as they do, because we're hard-headed and we're stubborn, and God has to, I wonder who the driver is of that 18-wheeler that's just going back and forth. You look in and you see Sri Yukteswar at the wheel. But there it is. But if this is the price of freedom, if this is the price of freedom for me, if this is the price of freedom for everyone that I look at, why would I not rejoice? Why would I even try to prevent it? Why would I even pray for it to end? What should we be praying for? You see, that's the real question. What does success really look like? We're so unimaginative in our ideas of success. If through this experience, this soul will be free, maybe forever, of whatever the karmic trajectory was that grabbed them at this point, why would I not want that to happen? Because of the discomfort? We can certainly resist, but reality always wins. There's another interesting idea. Swamiji said once, if you're going to judge yourself, and then he added parenthetically, which I don't recommend, he said, don't think about what you already are. He said, because we're not static. We're a flow of energy. We are the energy that's passing through us all the time. That's why every minute is different, because whatever energy has already passed through is already passed, and the new is beginning. He said, don't think of yourself as what you are. He said, think of what the flow of energy is. And above all, he said, think of yourself as what you aspire to become. Because what you aspire to become is where your energy is flowing, and that is a more true definition of who you are than anything else that you could ever say. Isn't that a marvelous way to look at it? And so even if we have just acted out what I lovingly call something that creates global humiliation, the marvel of Ananda and now in the internet and the fact that we're all on WhatsApp is that any transgression by any one of this lovely family is known all over the world, almost as soon as it happens. No matter what that is, by the time it's happened, it's over. It's over because you are the aspiration that's now going beyond it. This is defined causal, astral, material. We live in the material world and it looks so big to us, we think it's the big story. The fact is, by the time it's manifested, it's almost over. Because whatever is being created in the idea world of the causal, whatever energy is being added to those ideas, that's where we're going. And that's much more true. So in ourselves, don't worry about what we don't already know. Just worry about where. Don't worry about it at all. Just concentrate on what I aspire to become. What am I building? What are the beautiful ideas that are inspiring me every day? And then, of course, what am I doing to make them happen? And whatever it is right now, it's already behind me. Whatever circumstance I'm fighting, whatever kerfuffle I'm going through, whatever great disappointment I'm living, the mere fact that I'm doing battle to overcome it is really the only thing that's real. And it doesn't matter how. Victory doesn't look like marching in like in the movies or something like that. Victory looks like hope. Just that I know that even if now I don't trust Master, even if now I don't understand, I want to understand. That chant, I want only Thee, Lord, Thee, only Thee. When Swami first wrote that, I didn't like it very much because it was too big an affirmation for me. And he would sing it with such fervor and such commitment, and I admired that commitment. But it would be almost like if an affirmation is too big, it triggers the rebellion. I want only Thee, Lord. And my mind would immediately think, and this, and this, and this, and this. And you just keep playing it out. But the wonderful thing is, I can sing that a lot better than I used to be able to sing it. I've had disappointments and I've had fulfillments, and I've learned from both. And that's all that God asks of us. And the changes will keep coming because they have to. You know, is there an avatar in this room? You know, there's many great saints in this room. Many. It would have been like 1973 or 74, way early on. I said something to Swamiji. I have a visual memory. We were in a taxi cab in New York City. It's just like odd where these conversations take place. So it might have been a little later, but I said, "Sir, I can't imagine a more saintly group of people than the people that I find in our community." I said, "Is this the kind of ashram from which people get liberated?" Now, I know that sounded like we were imprisoned and we were going to be, let out of prison, which is actually the truth. I said, "Sir, is this the kind of ashram from which people get liberated? Because I can't conceive of how people could be more sincere and more deeply dedicated." And he said, interestingly, except for Mount Washington, or the Master, when Master was alive, and he said, some of what I saw around Ananda Ma, he said, I've never seen an ashram as elevated as this one. Isn't that interesting? We won the spiritual lottery, kids. We really did. I have no idea why. When sometimes, because I travel now, I meet lots of people, and I always have to tell the story over and over again, you know. I just say really simple, I don't have any idea, but I have very, 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 very good karma. Remember, that's what Master said, was it to Norman? When Norman was saying, I don't think I have very good karma, sir. And that was when Master thundered out, you have very, very, very good karma, even to want to know God. He didn't say to realize Him, but even to want to know, even to have perceived in this ever-changing world where 60 seconds after you're born, you're reaching up to get your satisfaction from the world around you. Even then, to have come to the point where it has crossed your mind that something else is happening. How many lifetimes? Everything else, every limitation, every suffering, every karma that you have is nothing compared to that. That not every day is joyful. Sometimes you just have to be calm. Sometimes you just have to put out energy. Sometimes you just have to realize, I can't get away from this, so I might as well just go through it. It's not like we always manifest our favorite of the 8 manifestations. But as long as we don't give up, and He'll never give up on us. There's that poem of Master's, you know it. I will return again and again, 1,000,000,000,000 times if necessary, crossing crags of suffering with bleeding feet. I mean, really. A couple of those lines would have gotten the point across. You know, the wordsmith in me is always looking at things like that. But and then what's the rest of the line? As long as one stray brother is left behind. Now bear in mind, if that stray brother was left behind, he probably was not a golden devotee when he had the other chances. You know, he had lots of chances and he managed to mess them all up. But he never lost hope. And we have to hold the Master's bleeding feet to the fire on that promise. You know, I'm never going to give up. And that's, to use Ananda's beginning phrase, that's the other thing that must never change, which is that I am yours. And you made me the way you made me. And I'm really sorry that you're going to have to come back for me. But we also have to have the faith that He wants to come back for us. We have to believe in our own goodness and our own sincerity, to know that not only will he come, he will be filled with joy to come. Even the worst among us. Think how much happier, think how much greater the homecoming is. You see? And that's how we succeed on the path. That's how we face it. That's how we win. Win, meaning win against delusion. To cognize what never changed and was always there. We wandered away, and we come back, and we find that the Master was always just standing there. Bless you.
Come gather round, we'll sing the blues away. Dawn now is breaking, and the mountains say, it's only light can make the darkness run. Lift up your head, greet the rising sun. Greet the rising sun. We'll chant of battles won, shots not of anger. Joy will be our gun. Before the light, the veils of sorrow rend. In ecstasy, all delusions end.